Thank you for joining us. Thanks for being part of today's meeting. We're really excited to give you an update for those of you that have joined one of our previous sessions, or for those of you that are new to the concept of the LearningShared CPLD program. We're really excited to introduce you to that today for the first time. I'm joined by Alistair Crawford from St Martin's and St Andrew's School, who many of you may already know, and Vijita Patel from Swiss Cottage. I'd like to thank Vijita and Alistair for their time and preparation in putting the information together. For those of you who don't know, I'm Alan Wood. I'm one of the directors at Evidence for Learning. So what we're going to be doing, I'm going to hand over in a moment to Alistair and Vijita. As you can see there, Alistair's going to start with just a look at the context really for how we've arrived at this point today with the LearningShared platform, and really what the context is for what we're offering. He's then going to introduce the platform, the program, the content that's available, and then we're going to provide a brief walkthrough to show you around the learning platform side of the offer. We'll then hear from Vijita from the perspective of a school leader. Really, we've spent a lot of time, Alistair will refer to this I'm sure, but we spent a lot of time over the last 12 to 18 months working with schools across the whole EFL LearningShared community. There's now more than 600 specialist settings in that community, so it's a phenomenally wealthy community in terms of the knowledge and expertise and experience in that community. And we spend a lot of time trying to work out where are some of the gaps and what are some of the ways that we can harness that community to provide value to the constituent schools. So Vijita will share some of her thoughts on that. We're then going to something new. We're going to give a preview and a walkthrough of the networking and collaboration space that's part of the LearningShared platform. That's something that we've been trying to develop for quite a long time now, and we've got something that we're going to share with you today, and that's going to be very much a part of the LearningShared platform. And then we'll wrap up with questions and how you can take advantage of it if you're interested in getting your school involved. We're now over 40 schools, so despite really just launching it at the very end of last term, so really coming into this new school year, there's already 40 schools signed up into the community, and that's obviously growing almost on a daily basis, but we'll come back to that a little bit later on. So I'll hand over to you at this point, Alistair. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Alan. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you all, and hope it's been a really positive start back to school after the summer break. So in terms of the context and where we are, and again, I think we said the pace of change is just it gets ever quicker as we move forward. I think last time we were in a similar meeting to this, we were talking about just a few months back, challenges of COVID and accountability measures. The green paper was about to be released, and all of those things are still very relevant, and I'm sure they will be across the winter, but things have moved on again, and there's a new set of challenges for us as school leaders. And I think top of everyone's list, and certainly the conversations that I've had across the summer break, and certainly as we've started back, have been around those kind of spikes in energy costs and unfunded pay rises, and the real challenges we face to our school budgets there. And if we think of the impact there as school leaders, what's one of the first things we can hope to kind of cut back on really? It's our CPLD offer there, and the concerns in terms of how we develop our staff team and what does that look like moving forward. I mentioned the green paper, and we are waiting in the kind of political merry-go-round that we have at the moment to hear the outcomes of that green paper. What does that look like, and how can we be really agile and responsive as school communities to that? I think other things we face at the moment are real challenges for our mainstream and our specialist schools in how do we recruit that specialist expertise, whether it's finding that really good Senko, or how do we find those next layer of teachers who are going to be really strong on inclusion and support inclusion across our school communities there. So, and that's a real worry for us there. We can see a perfect storm almost, can't we, in terms of it's really difficult to recruit those colleagues in, and yet we're really struggling in terms of how do we invest, how do we upskill them, how do we support them to gain that knowledge and expertise that we want to support our students and young people there. And I think we always come back to that answer of the community being really, really important, and how strong that collective collegiality that we have across the community in terms of how we can respond to those challenges that we face there. And hopefully with the kind of things that we'll share over the next sort of 20 minutes or so, and particularly when we have that walkthrough, maybe LearningShared as a platform has the ability to support and help us find some solutions to some of those really challenging questions and problems that we face at the moment. So in terms of that learning shared and the offer that we have there, and just to sort of have a very quick sort of oversight of what the offer will look like. So I think the caliber of the speakers and people who make contributions there very much speak for themselves, and we're really fortunate to work with just some amazing colleagues from across the community, whether that's in leading on the lectures or making contributions with case studies and so on there. And again, I think as a school leader, you know, you'd be really lucky if you had one member of your team to be able to go and listen to one of those colleagues on screen speak in an academic year. So I think the opportunity that you'd have to expose all of your staff team to listen to the kind of words of wisdom from those colleagues can be really, really powerful. And again, it says there, we're looking at, you know, a community of over 600 schools strong. And again, we think of those mainstream and those specialist settings, that cross-phase, cross-sector working and sharing of expertise being really, really powerful there. A really exciting part of the offer is the networking piece there, and I'm really looking forward to Alan walking us through what that platform looks like. I had a sneak preview a couple of nights ago, and there's some amazing potential to that networking tool and how we can all come together as a community. And finally, that last point really of what do we know about high quality CPLD? We know that that's sustained, it's over time. It's not that one-time kind of hit and run CPD where we send someone off to a training session and hope they come back and it's made an impact and they can then disseminate that kind of information across the team. We have that opportunity where all of our colleagues can engage in at a time that suits them. So again, we can see the impact and the potential that that has there. Just an oversight really of the different modules that we have and the things that you'd expect to see there. So those things that are really, really important, high priority sort of topic areas for our school community. So we think about curriculum and pedagogy, assessment, leadership. How do we develop our leaders? Again, we think of those colleagues joining our school communities, send policy and legislation. There's a fantastic module on there from Professor Barry Carpenter around reflective inquiry and developing that finding out culture within our schools, and that wraparound piece of well-being. And I think we all know as we come through the pandemic, you know, the importance of well-being for all of our students, our families, our staff team there, and what that looks like within our schools there. So an oversight and a really significant and a great scale to the platform there. Just to have a bit of a deeper dive really into some of the things that you will find within there. So there are different layers, I think, to the platform and that learning shared office. So you can see there, we'll have the lectures, those pre-recorded elements, including those case studies from leading schools there, which I always find very fascinating there. But I think a really important thing, as well as those sort of elements that sit there on the platform, there's that opportunity to really interact and engage with the offer. Think about those live elements that we have coming up where you're able to engage with panel discussions there, to ask questions of our module leads and our experts there, and also engage with some wider reading and resources. And obviously, again, Alan is going to walk us through that networking tool where that provides the opportunity to connect with schools from all across the country and those like-minded colleagues where we can share that best practice and support each other there. That on-demand element you can see there, I think, is really, really important. I think we all know our patterns of working have changed significantly over the last sort of 2.5 years. And we'll all have those colleagues who the best time for them to engage with that CPLD and their own personal development might come later in the evening, whereas equally so we'll have our colleagues who they're up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and that's the best time of the day for them to engage with opportunities there. So again, for all of our staff team to have access to that wealth of knowledge and resource there 24 hours a day, I think is something that's really, really exciting and can really, really have a huge impact across our schools. I mentioned the live events there, and just you can see quite a packed schedule across the autumn there. So that first live event that's coming in just a couple of weeks' time, which is led by Diane around curriculum, and you can see the ones that follow subsequently across the autumn term. Just to note that those sessions will be repeated both in the spring term and in the summer term. And again, I think that shows how responsive the LearningShared offer is as a platform. So I'm sure that when we come to repeating those sessions in the spring and the summer, the conversation will have moved on, and maybe we'll be talking about different things and those developments there. So again, it's something that's going to be updated all the time. And as you can see, lots of opportunities for your colleagues across your staff team to connect and engage across the academic year. I'm just going to stop sharing and hand over to Alan, who I think is going to help us to walk through that platform. Thanks, Alan.
So I've put in the chat, everybody, a link that you can use to find out more information about the LearningShared offer. That'll take you through to a page on the EFL website, which has a lot of the information that Alistair's already touched on. Here it's got things like the pricing, which we'll come back to a little bit later on. There's also a copy of the video from the pre-launch event that we did just at the tail end of last academic year. And then right at the bottom is where you would go to access it, but also to enroll your school. When you click on this link, that's going to take you over to here. So this is the learning platform side of it. So if you think of the LearningShared offer as consisting of a learning platform and a networking and collaboration platform. So this is the learning platform side of it. When your school enrolls for the offer, it works like a subscription. So everybody within your school, and that's everybody, as Alice has already alluded to, it's the staff in terms of teachers, school leaders, TAs, but also your governors as well. And the idea is that each stakeholder in your school that you want to have access to the learning platform and the networking and collaboration platform would have their own unique login. And what they would do is come to the site here. I'm just going to log in now. And one of the benefits of having their own login is the learning platform remembers what they've seen already, what they've accessed already, and what's potentially next for them. Although there's no linear sort of scheme of work to this stuff, it's really a collection of materials that can be used flexibly, as Alice has already alluded to. And I'll hand over at this point to you, Alice, obviously, because you can talk us through this.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Just scrolling through there, I think we can see just the huge scale of the offer and the number of things that you can find within each of those module areas. So again, the possibilities are endless in terms of how we can support staff, as Alan says, at every stage of their career, all the way through from the full staff team. And it's really interesting. Alan points out the governors as well, how amazing to give our governors the opportunity to access some of this latest thinking that we have there. And if we just settle on the curriculum offer for a moment, you'll see the different layers. And it starts with the making the most of, really, which is just something we've put in, which is a short sort of video within there, just to give some ideas and almost a starter for 10 in terms of how you might use this particular module. And you can see some ideas and suggestions there that you might use maybe within your leadership team, or how middle leaders might make most of the resources that we have there. So you'll all have fantastic ideas in terms of how you want to use these resources in many, many different ways. But that's just a starting point, really, and hopefully supports you in getting sort of working with the module that we have. And we can look into some of the things. You can see, I think, Diane's lecture that we have in there, and just an amazing opportunity. Diane's an exceptional leader. I'm sure you all know of with her work with the Rochford Review, really, really experienced in working with lots of schools, mainstream and specialist and multi-academy trusts. And again, to have access to her level of thinking, to have her posing some of those reflective questions, really, really is a gift, and something, I've certainly watched that several times now and come away with something new every time that I dive in and have a look there. In addition to that, thanks, Alan, for just coming out of there. There's case studies that we have there. So some really fantastic colleagues and schools from across the community. So Shona, who you can see there, doing some amazing work around well-being, and their sensory offer within their school community is just incredible. And as a school leader, I find it fascinating to have a look at what those other schools are doing, and maybe can I take some of those ideas and bring them back and tweak them, and what will that mean for our young people in our setting there. So in addition, as you can see, as we move down there, there's the in conversation piece, and there's Vijita and Diane there just exploring, having a deeper dive maybe into some of the points that will be raised within that lecture. And I've already spoken with some schools who are already signed up to the offer, and they've talked about watching those and almost pausing those as a leadership team and having a discussion. So what does that mean for us within our setting? How can we take those ideas? So it really does open up very nicely those coaching conversations that we'd have with colleagues across our team there. So thanks, Alan. If we can just come out of there.
I was just going to say, Alistair, that I don't know if you notice, folks, at the bottom under every video, there's a transcript and it's searchable as well. So if you're looking for certain parts of a conversation that you watched earlier, you can search for it and it'll take you to that relevant part in the video as well.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, and I think that comes back to that idea of coaching. If we think we've got emerging leaders within our school communities, that we can, again, expose them to that level of thinking, which is really, really exciting. If we just scroll down, Alan, I think to have a look at the well-being offer there. So I think the amount of resources that we have, thanks, Alan. Yeah, you can see there. And again, the colleagues that we have within there. So with Sharon Gray, Tina Ray, we have Laura Purser. So real experts, Dr. Janet Rose. So the colleagues that we have there are incredible. And again, the opportunity to have all of our staff team to be able to engage with those lectures, those modules, those case studies is really, really powerful. And again, if we think of the reflective questions that we have across there, again, to be able to sort of interact and engage with those modules in very different ways. It's not something that sits there and is standalone there. We engage with that in very, very different ways. And again, you can start to see some of the resources that we have. There's a curated set of wider reading and research for our colleagues, maybe who want to have a bit of a deeper dig into some of those particular areas. And we can already see how we'd maybe signpost certain colleagues to certain activities and have them think maybe as part of their appraisal, some performance management targets across the year there. So, you know, we can think about how we can develop those inquiry projects and action research maybe in certain areas across there. So again, you start to see the depth of the offer that we have there. Thanks, Alan.
Fabulous. Thanks, Alistair. So look, I'll hand over to Vijita now just to share her perspective on things. Thank you, Vijita.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I hope that everybody's well at the start of this new academic year. It's a real privilege to share reflections. I only share for 5 minutes because it's more valuable to be able to explore the interface itself. I just wanted to bring it back to 3 key areas, and starting with the financial realities, because I think it's important for us to make sure that, you know, as much as this new financial landscape, it seems to be that, you know, the financial realities are compounding so much for schools. We're a special school in the London Borough of Camden, and where we might have some financial hits, we're noticing the impacts on many services that actually work with our special needs community. What's really important is that while schools are really thinking about how they're going to reduce those costs, and it's really easy, as Alistair said, to look at some of the sort of non-core cost and see if that's where the quick win might be. I find it really interesting to see how when we've gone to key teams across our school, what's been shared is how there's a need for us to make sure that we're actually ensuring approaches with professional development, with the capacity building of our staff teams as the sort of increase in the complexity of need continues to come into our school, that we're ensuring we're protecting the elements of the budget that are related to training. And I think what's quite powerful about the resource that can come into your school through LearningShared, which I'm happy to share from our school perspective, is that it's allowed us to really think about where are the costs, but where are we going to be able to stop and think about what is the purpose of what we're investing in? What is the role of it? And actually, what will the majority of our staff really value? They're going to value something that is empowering them. And I think that is the most powerful piece that you're able to get through LearningShared, because it's not trying to be prescriptive. It's very much allowing any member of staff teacher, support staff, governors, colleagues that support your school really understand your school provision through quite sort of facilitated resources, through research, through the videos, through the scaffolded materials. And that allows us as schools to really think about where do we want to make sure we're able to increase that valuable resource versus what can sometimes be quite isolated training for CPDL. Building on that, I think we know that, I can only imagine something that all of us share on this call right now, which is we've started the school year and there have been some recruitment priorities. And while we're trying to sort of think about these puzzle pieces, I'm really struck by, as school leaders, what we want to think about is the retention of the colleagues that we have. They understand our schools, they're committed to our pupils, they know the values that and ethos that defines our schools as well. And what's quite important is when we're thinking about retention, we're also now finding ourselves in quite a sort of competitive situation. The expertise that can sit in our schools can be sought by others. And, we know that there's a lot of jobs available with not enough people. I think what's quite powerful about LearningShared is that it allows us to show that people are very much the most valuable resource in a school, and bringing LearningShared into your school is a way to show that there's something built into the school that is always going to be a resource for them, that they can have a lot of control and interaction with. But it's also a reflection of the school wanting to make sure that there's some resource that is going to always ensure that we're bringing it back to the core fundamentals. When we do that at this time where there's a big push around ensuring there's well-being, workload balance, being able to help, support staff feel the professional element of their role, LearningShared is really powerful at being able to enrich the reflections of staff, educate those who are new into some of those topics, but also it's a really powerful resource for us as school leaders, middle leaders, teachers, teaching assistants to know that it gives us the vehicle to have that collaboration, to have that community of professionals that are able to have that discussion together and have a common language around curriculum, pedagogy, reflective inquiry, some of the policy that's there, approaches with assessment. And what's great is I have to say LearningShared is the only resource I've seen that places well-being alongside those core fundamentals. Then building on that for me, quite importantly, post-pandemic, all of our schools right now are thinking about, okay, we are fully understanding the shifts that have happened in our local communities. And we're having to revisit and think about how we are helping our school communities launch this school year with a renewed sort of approach. What are the new values that we're driven by? What is our new vision? Because we know that we really want to make sure what we're doing for our pupils to develop their characteristics, their sense of self, their identity in their local community is in this new reality. What LearningShared does is it allows us to structure that. So you've got a resource that is accessible by all, but if you're a middle leader, if you're a school leader, you're going to be able to make a very clear, simple strategic plan on how you may want to support your teams to think about curriculum through a shared resource that you can then personalize to what your core vision is for your curriculum, for your community. It allows you to explore, define, and reflect together. And what's great about that is it's very much, I feel, able to allow our staff teams to see that we want to make those solutions together with them. And LearningShared is allowing us to make sure it's not the accountability system, it's not the pressures of Ofsted, it's not the pressures of the qualifications that are driving that. Actually, LearningShared lets us flip the narrative and say the way we want to engage with what we want to do for our pupils and our staff and the professionals wrapped around our pupils is through a resource that is shared and available to all. It almost crushes the hierarchy and it lets us show that, being able to access a training session or a one-off CPDL sort of course is not about who's in which role. It's showing that a school really is trying to build in a professional learning community. And what I feel is really powerful about that is it's showing a sign that a school in these tough times is promoting the collaboration, the reflection, and the empowerment of staff teams. And that can only have a positive impact on the provision, the way that it's going to be able to be owned and felt shared by the whole school community, but how it's also going to have an impact on pupil outcomes. And because of that, I think it's really important, if possible, to make sure governors understand the scale of what's provided, because really the cost is so low when we think about what that is for the number of staff that could be in a school community. So I hope those are helpful reflections to inform your considerations around learning shared as well. And I'll stop my screen share there, Alan and Alistair.
Thanks, Vijita. Thank you very much. That's great. I'm going to now show my browser and we'll have a look at the actual networking and collaboration platform. So this will be going live sometime during this half term. It's not quite ready yet, but it's almost there, as you'll see. We're really excited about it. What we've tried to do is to build on the obvious clear value that's in that learning platform part that you've seen, where there's some fantastic content ideas, there's reflections, there's case studies, a whole treasure trove of resources in there. And we wanted to then build alongside that a safe, private place that isn't Facebook, that isn't LinkedIn, or isn't your email box. You know, sometimes if you be part of various working groups, or you might have I was speaking to one head teacher that's part of a group that's growing and growing in terms of the number of schools that are involved in it. And so he's receiving emails from more and more different people each time. And obviously these emails are coming in alongside all the other emails. And so we wanted to create a space where really you could do that networking and collaboration in a way that was very ring fenced. There's nothing to stop you using this just really as a meeting place, and you can take those conversations, take those collaborations offline, you can take them into whatever realm you want to do, but hopefully you'll get the gist in a moment. So I've explained already, when you enroll your school for the LearningShared offer, you have the opportunity to create and define the logins for all your staff. And as Vijita said, please invite governors, as broad a range of your stakeholders as you feel comfortable doing. And each person will have their own login that will get them into the learning platform. And then they'll also they'll be invited, be clear about this, they'll be invited to be part of this. We're very mindful of GDPR and sensitive to people's privacy. So you won't suddenly be thrust into a spotlight with thousands of other practitioners, but you'll be invited to participate. So if you don't accept the invitation, then you won't get part of it either. So that'll be something to bear in mind as well. But if I log in now, I'm just going to give you a very quick overview. We've just set up some sample content and collaborations just to show you what's possible. So any of you that are familiar with LinkedIn, Facebook, Nextdoor, any of these social media type systems, it should be fairly familiar. So what can I find in this platform, in the network and the LearningShared networking and collaboration platform? So the first thing that I'll find is people. As I've said, you'll be able to invite your staff, and your staff will be invited into the platform. They can create a very, very simple profile. We haven't even put photos on there at this stage. It's really, this isn't social media. This is a community of practice for networking. We have the ability to add photos, and we may do that at some point, but it's certainly not a priority. And when you're creating your profile on the platform, you can say a little bit about yourself. We can connect you with your school, and you can say a little bit about what you might be interested in. Again, you don't have to do that. But what you are encouraged to do is to select keywords that are of interest to you, because the idea is if you've selected that you're interested in, say, post-16, or you're interested in autism, or work-based learning, or early years, or PMLD, for example, then the platform has the ability to personalize and send to you things that people might have shared or posted that align with your keyword interests. So the first thing you'll find is people. The next thing you can find is schools. So each school that's enrolled in LearningShared will have a presence on here as well. Now, again, the idea here is this isn't extra work for the school office, keeping updates. It literally is for the purpose of you, for example, saying that You might say, well, look, St Martin's School, we have a particular interest or specialty in post-16, secondary, complex needs, autism, so that, again, colleagues, if we think about, I mean, I can speak firsthand from this, and I know Blake's on the call too. I would say Blake and I probably receive half a dozen to a dozen calls a week asking us if we can recommend a good school to talk to about topic X. And unfortunately, the size of the community's left my brain behind years ago. So we're hoping that this is going to enable you to reach out and make those connections where they're going to be useful. So that's the first two obvious things you'll find: people in schools. The next thing that we've got the ability to create are groups. And you can see I've just created some samples here. We can have two types of groups in the LearningShared network and in collaboration platform. We can have open groups. So we might, for example, have a group for early career teachers, and anybody would be welcome to join that community. And the idea there is it gives a sort of private place and community. I don't say private to the outside world, but within the LearningShared community, it's open, where early careers teachers could share resources, post questions, etc., etc. The other type of, and these are just some other examples here. You could, for example, though, we could make the early careers teacher network a private network. So we could have, for example, a head teacher network that is closed only to the members of that group. So there's lots of scope here. And what we want to do with this is allow this platform to very much grow sort of with the will of the community, so to speak. So we're not going to be prescriptive in terms of saying what we can and can't do. The technology that we've put together into this actually allows things like Messenger, it allows video chat. So there's all sorts of really interesting things that we'll be able to do eventually with this. We want to keep it really simple at the moment. So it's a very simple opportunity to network with people, find people, share with people, collaborate. And like I said, maybe potentially take some of those conversations offline. So we've got people, schools, and groups. And then the other thing that we've got is what are called spaces. So spaces are open spaces within the LearningShared platform that are given over. You can almost think of them like an open air festival. So we've got already a space for each of the 7 modules that are part of the learning platform. And so the idea is, for example, if I go into the leadership space, Vegeta's posted an article here that she found useful, in this case on the cost of being a perfectionist manager. But the idea is then, if you're specifically looking for resources around leadership, or you're want to share resources in relation to some of the work that you're doing alongside in your school, that leadership module within the platform, then we've got a sort of a ring-fenced area where that stuff can live. The spaces are open, so any of your staff will be able to go into spaces and look at what's going on. And you can see within a space, we can share videos, we can share files. So one of the things that you'll be able to do is to share resources with other schools, or if you found particular resources that are useful, you'd be able to share those. And it works very similar to, most of these kinds of technologies. And the idea is then, is when I log in, it will automatically filter into my feed posts from the people that I follow, from areas that I'm interested in. And you can see we've got a bunch of different resources that have come in here. We can comment on them. So again, very similar to social media, we can like resources. So that will enable the system to elevate trending topics of interest. And so hopefully over time, as it starts to build up, it will just become this huge treasure trove, like I say, of just amazing people. I really liked what Vegeta had said earlier when she talked about empowerment. I think that's what we've really tried to do with this more than anything else, is to really empower you and your colleagues to really just to have those opportunities to find resources, so you're not stuck just within your school. So whether it's to find resources, to find people to connect with, find colleagues that are going to be able to support them in their practice. And then the other part is, which I was interested when Vegeta was talking about the recruitment side, hopefully this will also give a voice to colleagues that are in schools that are doing really, really good stuff, because we know there's loads of that going on. And hopefully this platform will give them a pedestal to share that to the broader community and give them due credit for that. But also it means that we all get a chance to tap into that expertise, and this whole idea of knowledge construction, that co-construction of knowledge through the sharing of ideas and sharing of practice. So that's the general gist of it. When I'm creating content, again, like I said, it's very similar to anyone who uses social media will know. I can upload a photo, I can put the keywords in. So I could say this is something that relates to, any particular areas. These are drop-down lists, so I could link it to specific keywords. I could then give it a title. I could then put some text in here. And you can post in here audio files, video, photos, links, documents. So it really is an ability to share whatever might be relevant. You can then decide whether you want people to comment on it, and then you publish it. And then that would be then published for the folks around the community, particularly those that follow you. But obviously, if you posted it into a group or a space, then it would bring it into those people too. So that's the platform. I'm going to hand back to Alistair just for the last couple of slides, and then we'll wrap up and give a chance for anyone's got any questions.
Thanks, Alan. Just really excited by the potential of that networking tool there, and the opportunity to reach out to like-minded colleagues with similar interests. Much the same as yourself, Alan. I feel lots of calls and emails every week, every day almost, where I say, can you tell me what's a really good example? Where will I see some brilliant work around sensory? Where will I see a school that does well-being really well, and so on? So for those to all be centralized there and to be able to engage with that. And again, I think, how much time do we spend trying to seek those areas of expertise out when we go searching? So there's a workload implication there if we have those again in that same place, and almost a one-stop shop, I think, that can be really, really powerful. Just to share on screen there is in terms of what a plan would look like, and there's exemplars of this that are within the system. And I think in time it would be brilliant if schools and colleagues shared these, and again we can have those eyes in terms of how schools are using the platform and the kind of work that's going on. But you can see there in terms of the different modules and how we could maximize the impact of the resource that we have here. So maybe picking out a couple of those key modules that are linked to our school improvement plan. So for example here, wellbeing and curriculum, and those key links. So maybe a school is looking to develop a new wellbeing team and how they're being responsive to a changing cohort where SEMH and anxiety are really prevalent in the students and young people they have in school there. So you can see there in terms of how that sort of flows through and what that key focus would be there. So some questions really, what's our rationale and intent for the wellbeing team, the implications for curriculum design, and then those very set actions in terms of how we could use that. So you can see there an example of maybe watching one of those particular lectures or two of those lectures on an inset day, perhaps how we'd get our behaviour and engagement team to work with key teachers, those subject leaders, to reflect. And again, you can think about how this would tie in with those school improvement plans, those strategic development plans there. You can see how maybe in that appraisal performance management, where colleagues could be set different tasks and how they could use those resources in very different ways. And at the bottom section there, those very tangible next steps that we'd have there. So again, how we can interact and intersect with that offer in very different ways, both in the lectures and the resources that sit there. And also you can see there how we could get colleagues to engage with those live sessions, those panel discussions. And again, really exciting how they could then link in and connect with other schools who have similar areas of interest there. And again, that collegiality, that sharing and collaboration that we know is so important and such great value to our community. And just to summarize, really, to sort of it's come towards the end, and there'll be opportunities for kind of questions, and happy to field any questions from colleagues there. But those key points that we've gone throughout, really, I think Vijita shared that unique tool that shows that real investment in all of our staff team and all of our colleagues there, putting their development at the heart of all we do there, and providing those opportunities for every member of staff across the school team. We talked earlier about that kind of that on-demand nature there, where colleagues can interact with that at a time that's convenient for them, and they can really further their career in terms of how they engage with the offer. And I think it's important to come back to that sense of kind of value for us and all those points we discussed earlier in terms of those spikes in energy costs, unfunded pay rises, and what that means for our school budgets there. And, you know, again, I've fielded several emails in the last sort of couple of days that are advertising courses where I can send colleagues on for maybe a virtual course for £120, £150 for one colleague. We know the cost of maybe going to a conference there of maybe £300 and travel costs and release there. So I think the potential and the impact across your staff team for absolutely fantastic value is probably there for all to see there. So I'm just going to hand back over to Alan. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alistair. So just to, I guess, wrap up and go through the costs, we've tried to keep the costs really as affordable as possible for a school, taking all things into account. As you can see, we've made a pretty substantial investment, both in terms of the technology, but also into the content. But I'm pleased to say that we've been able to do that. So we've got an introductory launch price. There's two prices on the screen at the moment. One is if you're a school that has EFL already, then the cost of the subscription to both the learning platform and the networking and collaboration platform is £500 plus the VAT. And that'll take you through till the 31st of July, 2023. And just to remind you, that provides access to everybody within your single setting, okay, for that full period of time. And then if you're a school that doesn't yet have evidence for learning, then it's £600, excluding that. If we jump to the next slide, just quickly, Alistair, I'll just point out, as I said right at the beginning, if you wanted to find out more information or would like to enroll your school, if you go to the web address that's on the screen now, what I might do actually, Alistair, is if I just quickly take control, I'll just remind everybody where that goes to. So if you type that URL in, you'll come to this page on the Evidence for Learning website. There's more information there. And then if you scroll right to the bottom, this will then take you through to, sorry, not to that page, it will take you through to the learning platform page. And you can see there's a bit more information down there, but you can literally enroll your school up there. There's a button and you can either fill in the form there and submit your request, or if you'd like some more information. To be honest, most of the information is either on those two preceding pages, and we'll be making this video available to you as well. What I would say, because we've got this first event on the 28th of September, we've got just over 40 schools that signed up during the pre-launch period. So depending on numbers, we are possibly going to be restricting numbers per event per school. So we want every school that's enrolled to be able to come, but we might have to restrict that a single school can't send 30 people to one of the events, just because the events are going to have breakout rooms. We want to really foster collaboration during those events. But more importantly, if you would like to get to the first event on the 28th of September, at the moment, it takes about a week to get you enrolled, because one of the things we need to do is, once you place your order for enrollment, there's a form for you to fill in. And part of that form is obviously to give us all the details of all of your staff and governors that you want to create accounts for. And so they'll need that in order to get into Diane's first networking event. So I would recommend, if you are very keen to be part of that first event, which is the event for curriculum this term, then I'd try and get your sort of ducks lined up for enrolling as really this week, very early next week, if you can. We'll try and get you enrolled as quickly as you can. And part of it will be how quickly you can get your paperwork back. But I know they're processing quite a few at the moment, Ali and the team. So, but I say, if you've got any questions, do please get in touch. And look, on that, I'll hand it over to the floor. If anyone does have questions now, please feel free to unmute yourself, just because people will start tailing off now. I would like to just take this moment to thank Alistair again and Vijita for their support in putting together today's event and the presentation. But also, as you will have concluded already, they've been instrumental alongside a number of other people across the community. I can't stress enough, it's so exciting to be part of this community, because we've got an amazing group of leaders, practitioners that have contributed, as you can see, to whether it's case studies, even just to the ideas that we're talking about. And everything that you've seen already is a growing resource. We'll be adding to this. If you're on this call and you feel you've got something to share and to add to some of those case studies, we absolutely would love to include it. So I'd like to thank everybody that's really been part of putting this together so far, because it's very much a community effort. And thank you all for staying behind to listen today as well. But if there are any questions, we'll be happy to take them from you now. Yeah, so Joanne's asked, will there be regular new content? Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've added to it since it's already gone live. And as I mentioned a moment ago, if as a school you feel you've got something that you'd like to share, we'd really like to hear from you.